as you can actually see live. So my sister is like the biggest Deadpool fan, like the absolute biggest Deadpool fan, and so she likes all things Deadpool. So it's like you're gonna do when this is off the air. You're gonna say, like, "Where did you get that?" So I can bribe her with that. So here you go, love you.
That's right.
Yeah, it works. It works. Totally works. So how you doing today, man?
I am terrific, Josh, man. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Definitely appreciate it. Excited
Oh,
to sit down and, get to interact with your show and everything. I've seen some fun episodes and heard from a lot of people that have been on that it's a blast, so I'm excited to be here.
well, unfortunately, everything you've heard about me is probably true. I'm just going to say that up front. The good, the bad, the ugly, it's all true. Totally. The other thing I'm also kind of jealous of, actually, not jealous and admire your taste in metal. If I'm reading that correctly, that's Nightwish.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, which is an excellent choice for metal. It's a good one for like everybody.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah.
I got this hoodie when I saw him live in Cleveland. It
I'm,
was awesome.
I'm a little jealous. The biggest band, I mean, I did get to see a really cool band on Friday, so it was just like Omnium Gathering was. They're amazingly fun live to listen to.
Yeah.
Also, I'm not 30 anymore, so when you bounce up and down at 40, like you're 30, the next day you wake up and you're like, why did I do that? Actually, no, I didn't say that. Like I said, the thing that surprised me was it wasn't my legs, wasn't my ribs, wasn't my shoulders, wasn't my neck. It was behind the knee, like my left knee. It was like, what the hell happened? Right?
Oh,
What the
that's
hell
awesome.
actually happened?
I know. I feel that all the time. I'm 35, and I feel like I'm creaking and making noises that I should not be making at this age.
Well, I lifted a lot when I was at like my day job prior to doing some of the things I've been doing. Hi, Maddie.
Hi,
Not as
Maddie.
sore as I was. Not as sore as I was, Maddie. My quads are sore, but that's I jumped up and down for 4 hours. I'm okay with my quads still being a little sore. You know, 3 years after a pandemic, you forget a couple things about moshing in a pit. One of them is, oh my god, it's a good workout. It is an intensely
Oh my
good.
God. Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're using all those muscles you're not used to using. Pushing forward and it gets
So
intense.
my superpower in the mosh pit, this is this thing. Like this is my strategy every time. I don't actually have a desire to move. Like what I mean by that is I'm not trying to push my way forward necessarily. I'm just kind of going with the flow of the pit. So
Yep.
if I'm getting bumped around, I'm bumping back. But if I move up, it's because the opportunity presents itself. So I almost always end up in the first three rows. I almost always do. I almost never go for the first row because the first row is, although physically easier to get there, yes, right. Okay, fair enough, Maddie. Fair enough. But again, I also kind of feel like the first row you're in this really awkward spot because it's usually where the guys' girlfriends are, and it's
Mm.
like, do I really want to push them around? Like, do I really want to do that to get there? It's like, nah, I'm good on the second row. Second row is fine. You get almost all the perks of being in the first row. The only abandoned benefit being in the first row actually is if you want to get out. That's the easiest way to get out usually.
Mm.
But yeah, if you're just there to have a good time, second row is just fine.
Yeah, I love being like close to the stage, but not like right up next to it. Because I've been on the railing at places like Warp Tour and stuff like that, and you get just smashed in, and you can't move until the song is over, and then you have like a brief break until the next song starts. But I'm great with being a few rows back, like almost to the middle, because you can catch all the guitar picks and everything like that there, but you're also not smushed in and feel claustrophobic.
Yeah, well, again, for everybody, it's a little different. Like I said, like in this particular place, the middle was because of the stage where we were at. The middle was where the mosh pit was happening.
Uh,
So you wanted either to be in the very back or in the very front because in the very front you're still moshing a little bit, but you're not always in the thick of it. And there were some big boys in the mosh pit, but for me, the hardest hitter was a 120 pounds soaking like redhead girl, just like doing like these leaping body checks, man, just like unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That's
She
awesome.
left her
That's
feet on like several hits. It's just like, wow, you were into it. So
Yeah. Yeah, one of my favorite things about metal shows is just kind of the community, and like everybody's super cool at metal shows, and then like mosh pit etiquette is really a thing, and a lot of
yes,
people don't like if you're not in the metal community, you don't really know that that's a thing. But like if you go to a metal show and you fall down in the mosh pit, like everybody stops and picks
yep,
you up, and then you keep going. Like it's awesome.
yeah, no, I picked up like 3 people during the show just because it happens, right? Also, they all stop when you like your lead singer is crowd surfing, then nobody's moshing because like it's almost like a cheap shot.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
yeah.
awesome, man. Yeah, I want to see that band. I've heard a lot of their music, but no, Maddie, no, it's a Deadpool mug.
Yes, it's a Deadpool mug. Spider-Man is part of the Deadpool. Spider-Man is part of the Deadpool universe, although
Oh yeah, oh,
not. So my favorite. We'll talk about that. My favorite Deadpool stories, oddly enough, are. Do you remember when X-23 was Wolverine?
yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
right. So my favorite part was when she has another clone of herself called Honey Badger, and Deadpool's like this demented uncle to her. It's like you look at those two. It's like who's the adult here? I guess it's Deadpool, maybe, kind of,
yeah.
because he becomes this really sweet like for her for Honey Badger. He became this really sweet person, and it's
Mm.
like aw, so cute. And it's like it's one of my favorite part like that's probably some of my favorite Deadpool. It's like when he's sweet Deadpool, he's still demented as fuck, but he's
Mm.
oddly hilariously human. Like at the same time.
Yeah, he's just such a good character, and he's been a great character for the Marvel franchise in general. I mean, he's up there with like the Wolverines and Spider-Mans, and like characters that people pretty much instantly recognize, and like his ability to do those different things is amazing. Because you can see his human side, and you can empathize with him and feel bad for him and everything, and then he can also be absolutely demented and just fly off the rail, and nothing he does makes sense, and that's normal for him too.
Yeah, it's like you just go with the ride. He's Marvel's version of Axe Cop. Just go with it, and
Mm-hmm.
shut your brain off a little bit, but you'll have a good time. You know. No, I'm hoping. Like I said, I have this really crazy idea to start a. I have a advertising thing I'm thinking about doing. Putting it through the test ringer tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I found the most intense client I could find. Like someone has pushed me to do really good work. If I can make her happy, I can do the rest of everybody happy. It's like yes, and I can advertise for people. That kind of deal. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing about that. But like I said, that's kind of what's happening with me. You are a comic creator, right? By trade. Are you like writer, letterer, penciler? What's your
No, I actually more write novels and everything like that. I've worked on comic books before, but nothing that really like ever got published or came to fruition or anything.
okay?
Yeah,
So
it's mostly science fiction and fantasy writing, and I mean, like, I love superheroes and comics and shit like that, so I'm definitely in the world and up with all that stuff. But yeah, like primarily I write more novels and short stories and things like that
I
in
can
the
respect.
science fiction and fantasy realm.
I totally respect that. For me, I'm a huge Bradbury guy. I love Ray
Mm.
Bradbury. I love Rogers of Lasney. Someone the older I get, the more I appreciate. And and yes, folks, I am that old. Shut up. And finally, I really I'm digging Michael Moorcock a lot more. I know that sounds like a really strange one, but he's like this old. He's the original like old school like mashing science fiction and fantasy stuff together. Like he was one of like the originators of that with his Eternal Champion stuff. Everybody
Oh
knows him
wow!
for
I don't
yeah.
think I've ever read that before.
You never read anything by Michael Moorcock?
No, I
You
don't
never
think
read
so.
Elric? You've never read Hawkmoon?
No, no.
Oh, dude, it's okay. So Liam Sharp and Grant Morrison did a Green Lantern run, right? So
Yeah.
one of the pulpy, more pulpier issues was a complete homage to Moorcock. Like both of those guys are huge Michael Moorcock fans. So I'm
Okay.
like, I see where you've stolen all this material from, right? I approve because I get it. That Green Lantern run in particular was a homage to like Hal Jordan Green Lantern from like issues 1 through 74 of the original series. So if you ever read any of that stuff, you really
Okay.
liked it. You really liked it. If you didn't, you probably said this was a weird, kooky book, and that is, I totally get it. It was made for people like me, and I was okay that I was the audience for it. So, but
That's
no,
fair.
they were huge. They're huge Moorcock fans. Like Moorcock is very much he wrote in the 70s. He's a novelist, also a musician. 70s, 80s, 90s. He still writes a bit today. But like his big three were Elric, which most people do know of in some form or fashion. Corum, probably is least well of the three I mentioned, is less well known, and Hawkmoon, right? And I'm a big Hawkmoon guy. I dig like the evil empire multiverse stuff, right? The first book's called Jewel in the Skull. He actually literally has a jewel in the skull that compels him to obey the empire. And the story is how he gets out of that is always really, really, really interesting. So yeah, I love the old school
Oh,
science
that's cool.
fiction stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it
love
sounds
the old,
awesome.
yeah. So what's your science fiction? Okay, usually if you are writing science fiction and fantasy, you must love science fiction and fantasy. So where did that love come from?
Well, honestly, man, since I can remember, as far back as I can remember being a really little kid, just being enamored with the ideas and possibilities of magic in particular, like
Hmm.
magic, wizards, dragons, that kind of stuff, just it always blew my mind. Like, and, I'd be out playing when I was like 4, 5, 6, trying to cast spells or like change the weather or something like that. Like, I'd always be out there doing that type of shit. And, Lord of the Rings, I've loved forever. And, just everything like that. I actually hated Harry Potter when it first came out because I was at that age where like it was too young or it was like for little kids and it wasn't cool, because I was in like seventh, eighth grade and I was like, no, that's for little kids. I can't read that. But then when I actually read the book, I loved it.
Oh yeah, no, it's crack. Like it kind of like so. Now Harry Potter 1 and 2, you're probably right. Like they were intended for a younger audience.
Mm,
But Harry Potter books like 3 is still, I think, the best Harry Potter in the entire run. Like it's just one of those books where you just like, wow, this is adult Harry. Like this is as adult as you get, and the choices Harry makes in that book are incredible. It's my favorite book in the series. 4, 5, 6, and 7 are more adult for sure,
yeah.
but 3 I think is the most adult decision he ever makes in the entire series. Right when he's confronted with the person that was responsible for the death of his parents, I thought it's like, holy crap! Like Prisoner of Azkaban is still far and away my favorite book in that series. So
Yeah, yeah, it was amazing. I don't know if I really have a favorite in the Harry Potter. I mean, it might be Goblet of Fire, it might
Goblet of
be
Fire is good.
Order of Phoenix, and it might be Half Blood Prince. All three of them were just so damn good. And then when they start introducing like occlumency and stuff like that for Snape to teach Harry how to like block Voldemort from his mind and everything, and like it was just so cool, all the different details that they went in for all of that. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
no, I like I said, hated it when it first came out, but then when I actually gave it a chance and read it, I fucking love it. I even have a 9 3/4 tattoo
nice.
with a snitch on it and everything. Like, love it.
Yeah, a lot of people. No, Harry Potter is a great series. It really, really is. It was the right place at the right time with the right like everything. No, I dug it a lot too. Like now that I'm like at the ripe old age of 40, my favorite stuff. At the ripe old age of 40, I was just I'm now reading more and more kids books. I've gotten less mature somehow, some way in my old age, but I'm oddly okay with it. I mean, occasionally now I talk to clouds, but that's that. I figured that'll just become a thing as I get older. But
Yelling at kids when they walk on your lawn. you know.
I don't know if I'll ever get to that point. I don't know if I'll ever get to that point. I think talking to clouds is where I'm going to be in my own little universe. You know, it's super cool. Like no, I had the opportunity to like I said, I've had some really cool opportunities doing this kind of stuff myself. But yeah, for me it was Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov, and Edgar Rice Burroughs that got me into science fiction and fantasy. Then I
Mm.
read Robert Jordan. Then I started like I should not have read Jordan first. Jordan ruined Tolkien for me.
Yeah.
Like because I read because it was like Tolkien's the originator, and I will always acknowledge that. But yeah, when I read Jordan, it was like this is a more sophisticated, clearer vision than this.
Yeah,
And
it is. It is. I mean, yeah, like you said, it was relatively new for Tolkien. I mean, not that fantasy hadn't been around, but like he kind of really brought everything to the forefront, in my opinion, I suppose, and what I've seen throughout time. But I don't know, like Tolkien, I enjoy. I love Lord of the Rings, like, and I'm massive fan. I have the Tree of Gondor as well. Sorry, I can't get it in the friggin' camera. Tree of Gondor. Um, and so
but yeah,
I,
you're a Tolkien guy. There's nothing wrong with that.
but I like the Lord of the Rings books are a hard read.
Yes.
Like if especially people this day and age where they want things quick and fast. It's going to start becoming one of those books that's like harder and harder for people to actually pick up and finish. They're more so going to watch the movie or maybe listen to the audiobook. Because it's like older fantasy like that is so long and drawn out. Like everything is really carefully crafted and set up, and a lot of people appreciate that, and I appreciate that. But I think we're going to start moving to an era where people don't appreciate it as much because we live in this like now give me everything instantly society,
I,
where the videos that we watch are 7 seconds long, and so
I don't know
I
if
think
we're,
it's
I
going to be
see.
hard.
I think it's gonna go kind of like I think it goes like this. It's kind of good. Like we're really good with today. This is the thing about today. Television and video games and the internet have definitely altered what writing has been for sure. Like how we write, how we describe something back in 1984. Yes, pun intended. Versus uh, now is very, very different because television, even though was at the time still relatively new and hadn't hit our society in a way it became the absolute place where people got all their information. Now television in itself has kind of become obsolete because I can get everything faster on the internet now. But I do think where I think the trade-off is um, I think the internet has actually helped. Well, depending on what you do with the internet, if you research like I do or other people do that write books, your attention to detail has actually gotten bigger because
Mhm.
you have all this data that you're looking at all the time. I just think what happens now is it's the presentation of it is different. But a good story is a good story is a good story. Like when I was reading Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, right? It
Mhm.
flows. Like I don't care. It's 1,000 pages. It fucking flows. For most of the book, and there's a few pieces that kind of feel like from that era and from that time. But I think good storytelling is universal.
Yeah, that's absolutely a fair point. And I mean, I agree with you, and it transfers through all mediums, I mean, like the books transferred really well to movies, I think, the Lord of
Mhm.
the Rings books. They've tried things in the past that didn't work out quite as well, but there was actually animated Lord of the Rings movies in like the 80s, and they were awesome. They were super
I
cool.
never saw them, so I
Oh my
mean,
goodness, yeah. My mom had them on VHS when I was growing up, and they were super cool, and definitely lived up to it. I heard once that they were gonna do they were planning on making a Lord of the Rings like way back in the day and having the Beatles do it. Like,
ooh,
yeah, they were one of them was gonna be Aragorn, one of them was gonna be Gandalf, one of them was gonna be Gollum. Like,
George Harrison has to be Gandalf. If that's in that situation, it has to be.
right. Right, but
I think Ringo Starr. I think Ringo Starr.
that movie though,
Yeah.
know.
I just say like if any of them's going to be Gandalf, it's George Harrison. That's just the way it has to be. Now the other three, everything else is kind of negotiable. I actually would enjoy John Lennon as Gollum, I think, but I may be a little crazy that way.
That could be absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, I think it'd be awesome. I think it'd be freaking awesome.
Absolutely.
Right?
But
It'd be
yeah,
like it's like what if Drunken History was Lord of the Rings? That would be the Beatles playing Lord of the Rings. Like it would just be like, I'm in.
yeah.
It's not the definitive version I want, but I'm in. Right? So okay, so you're big into Lord of the Rings. Where do you stand on Star Wars? And I'm the common thread between them is kind of the hero's journey concept. So
yeah, that is correct. Now, I absolutely love Star Wars. Love it. I haven't gotten a tattoo of that yet, but that is on my to-do list.
Jar Jar Binks. Is it going to be Jar Jar Binks?
Oh no. Giant back piece, cover my whole back with Jar Jar Binks. but no, man, I love Star Wars. Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And again, have ever since I was a kid. My parents again had the Star Wars VHS when I was growing up, and I would watch those. And absolutely loved it. And it's like, to me, sci-fi and fantasy have always been kind of in the same realm, because it's the same idea. It's just set in different time periods. It's like magic in medieval times and technology that seems like magic in the future. It's basically the same thing. You can have anything, and that's what I love about it so much is, your mind, your imagination is the limit. You can create whatever you want to create and make it make sense in whatever medium you're putting it in, whether it's in the future with some crazy technology that achieves this thing that you want to, or whether it's in medieval times with fantasy and a spell or something that achieves this thing that you want to. You can do whatever you like, and that's what's so exciting to me, is just limitless possibilities.
Yeah, sounds well. I would go so far like today. If you look at a lot of modern fantasy, there's a lot more merger of technology into it. Like look at something like Jade City, like Fond du Lis. You got 1950s, 60s, 70s stuff. There's televisions, there's phones. Like it feels like an old school. Like how do I put this? An old school like kung fu esque style like story with a bit of gangs in New York in there, and then you throw in magic with the jade stuff, and it's this really intricate world. I think like I said, I think Selazny was one of the first people to do that. And I just think I think the big difference between fantasy and science fiction is the emphasis of what the story is about. Science fiction is all about, well, what if this thing happens? What happens next? Fantasy is, I got this really cool story and I want to make up this incredible world to tell it. So you kind of almost have like two different stories going on in a fantasy novel. Like when The Wheel of Time, we'll use that as a simple example. The story of the dragon defeating the Dark One is the chosen one saving the world is a very common theme in The Wheel of Time, right? And that meta story of Luz Theron going mad and breaking the world in his madness, right? Because of his battle with the Dark One, right? Is very much it plays a major role in pretty much the whole story until the very end of it, where we get to the point where Bran has to confront that aspect of the madness, and what he finds is something new and different and wonderful. And yes, folks, I am spoiling The Wheel of Time just a touch. It has finished. It's been finished for a few years now. I don't feel bad about it. Brandon Sanderson wrote a very cool conclusion. But I think, but that's the thing. Like I think what fantasy does very well is it focuses on stories and myths and legends and kind of like and tells you stories in these worlds with those stories as background, which makes it so much more interesting and so much. It adds a depth to the world. Like stories are the depths of the worlds of a fantasy novel, whereas a science fiction novel doesn't necessarily care about that. It does to a point, but what it's much more interested in, hey, listen, I have a technology that'll make you fall in love with me. No, you cannot help it. You're just gonna fall in love with me. So what does that look like for the person using it? right?
Hmm.
It's a different emphasis on where the story goes, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's definite differentiators, and definite.
Oh yeah.
I just kind of I in my own mind, I've always kind of grouped them together in the
Oh, me
same
too. Oh, me too.
ideal, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like what I love about science fiction is the idea of like where we could possibly go. You know what I mean? Like, and that to me is the big difference. Like whereas in fantasy, like it's like what could magic be? What could magic look
Yeah.
like? And how could all these different beings interact? And what would that world look like? But with science fiction, for me, when I'm writing at least, it's like where could we go as a society, or like where would we be if this had happened in our history and then we advanced from there, or like where would we be in the year 3055, or what would this universe look like that's next to ours, or this different galaxy that's next, there's so much to actually explore that's more based in reality to me.
No, okay, fair enough. So, who are your science fiction guys?
Like to be completely honest, I haven't read a ton of science fiction other than like Brandon Sanderson and yeah, no, basically just like Skyward from Brandon Sanderson and a little bit of that. I more so watch science fiction stuff than read.
Okay, so what do you watch?
So Netflix had this show recently called Another Life, and that was it was a little bit more of like a more modern science fiction, because it wasn't like super advanced, but it was like basically what would happen if this big thing landed on Earth one day, and we were just past space travel. Like we had been doing it for a few years, and then this giant thing landed on Earth, and then we get into our rocket and fly out and try to find where it came from. And then the whole story surrounds that, and it's super super, like the story in this is really good. It's not one of those science fiction movies like you were kind of referencing before, where they were like, like look at this technology and look at these cool special effects we can create and look at all this cool stuff happening. Like it's more focused on the people who are living the events and like what they're going through. And it's awesome because it really makes you like feel for them. And there's parts in the show where like, not to spoil anything, an alien gets in this dude's head, and like seeing how he's experiencing that, and then the people who are around him who care about him are experiencing that situation as well. They do a really good job with it.
Yeah, okay. So, I guess for me, I mean, my science fiction of choice when I was growing up was Star Trek and Babylon 5. I've had this
Yeah.
conversation on the show about Deep Space Nine and Babylon 5 being probably the two best shows of those eras. And yes, I'm talking the clouds again. Back in my day. But anyways, um, but those were definitely like the kind of shows that I really enjoyed. And they had cool like these cool worlds, the great character moments. Movie wise, um, I haven't seen too much stuff recently. I have become very out of touch with like modern pop culture. I have come to the conclusion that being uncool is okay. I think the
Oh,
most recent,
absolutely.
yeah, I've come to the conclusion that I am perfectly happy in my own little corner of the universe, playing like reading Japanese light novels like Classroom of the Elite. I can play video games like Persona, and I'm very cool. I'm very cool being my little corners of the universe because I don't have time to be entertained by a ton of crap anymore because I'm making stuff. Occasionally, I will dip into something like I am pondering getting into the Wheel of Time series because that's but that was my baby. But I've been told by people, hard no, you should run away as fast as you can because it just doesn't match up. But again, I also am very understanding of the fact that sometimes a show will how do I put this? Sometimes a show it because television is a different medium than I would say than a book, that sometimes the show it's just not possible. Like we talked Brandon Sanderson. I don't know if I would love to see a Mistborn series. I'm not sure I'd want to see a Mistborn movie because I
Yeah.
don't think you could do a movie justice with that. But a series would be intriguing, right? And I love the first trilogy a little bit better than I love the second trilogy because I love Vin. Vin's just this badass. She's just such a badass.
Mm.
But that all said, you have a great little world that'd be fun to explore and fun to do, right? And I look at that and think, okay, that's really, really cool. But like I said, but when you look at like talking about science fiction, I've always been a big fan of the shows that make you think. They don't have necessarily the clearest answers, what's right or what's wrong. They let the audience kind of make those decisions, but they show like both sides, like as different sides to the equation. And are they doing or some really good character moments? Like I mentioned Deep Space Nine in the past. Like they did a story where Miles O'Brien got served. He got an equivalent of a 20-year prison sentence downloaded into his brain. And the actual prison trauma and stuff like that was still in him, even though he only experienced it for all of a couple of days.
Mm.
Right? In real time, that's but in his head, he'd been through it for 20 years. And it nearly broke him because just like the horrors he saw in a prison. And even though it wasn't real to anybody else, it was real to him. And that was such an interesting exploration of the human psyche because, like, what is real? And that's like probably the biggest question left in science fiction at this point in time, right? What is real? And right, and those things that you experience, you may not always be able to enunciate them to everybody else, but they're still real and they still happen to you. And now, what do you do with them? That's a very compelling stuff. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, and I love that type of science fiction as well. I mean, like don't get me wrong, like I love both. You know, like I love like Ender's Game. That was absolutely
ooh,
fan fucking tastic, and the movie was awesome too. If you've seen the movie was really cool. And I mean, what was that one? Um, I was gonna say Blade Runner, but I mean science fiction as well, also really cool. New Dune I have not seen yet, but I really want to sit down and watch that one. Um,
I read the books. I read the books on Dune, so that I have a very interesting take on Dune. The
yeah,
odd books are awesome, and the even books suck. And the only one is that's just my opinion. Other people might have a different opinion of it, but the odd books are really, really good. The even books are really, really terrible with Dune.
that's really funny.
That's always been the case with me. Um, but he was trying something new, and
Hmm.
and Dune, like the first Dune book is amazing. The third Dune book, I think, it was really bold. And then four was like, meh. Five was cool. And six, I gave him a pass on that one because he knew he was dying. So he
Hmm.
just put that story out there as quickly as he could. I got that. So the six, I'm like, I'll give you a pass on six, but two and four.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's funny. Yeah, another one was Lost in Space that Netflix just redid recently, and I think they had like 3 seasons of it. And that one was another one that really kind of makes you think and presents you with these questions of like how would we react in these situations, and like it was really realistic as well because I mean like their space travel in that show was relatively new. Like we had just started getting into space and everything like that. And then these colonists who had to leave Earth, basically get lost in space, as the name would imply. And they find all kinds of, different weird worlds and different things that they encounter. And it really goes into how the human experience of that. And I think that's really interesting to see, because it lets us kind of experience space travel and, seeing different planets and stuff without actually having to take the risk of, going out if we have the capability to do so.
Well, just from my own experience, like the more experiences you get, it gives you pause. It's almost like you just see the world in a very different light. And if you have experiences that are relatively unique to other people, right? It's hard to relate to other people because, like, how do you say we were going in outer space regularly right now, right? Or at least some people were. How could, let's say I was going to the moon and you weren't. how could I describe the moon to you from up close? Like you'd want to know because like what was the moon like,
Hmm.
right? The worst thing I could tell you is it's okay. Like what the fuck, right? But at the same time, it's like how do I explain? There's a context, right? Whereas someone that's been it has the experience, right? You can have a very different conversation. It's like, oh, how did this react to you? It's like, oh, this was pretty cool, and then they explain their own experiences, and you get more out of it. And so it's like with Lost in Space, like there's two parts to it. Number one, it's like you realize like they're lost, but if they do go home again, it's cool that they're home. But I think the most interesting story you can tell if you ever want to go past the Lost in Space concept is when they get home, what do? Because you've seen so much more, you've done so much stuff, and you can't even quantify that to anybody else or to very few people.
No. I would think that the closest equivalent that we could get is soldiers coming back from war.
Mhm.
Like the PTSD and the experiences that they experience there are, some of the most horrific things that anyone could ever see. And like again, like you said, how do you describe that? You know, so I think the closest thing we can come to is, soldiers and uh because yeah, I mean, if you went to space, like, what would that even be like talking to somebody else? They're be like asking you about it, and you're like, well, let me sit you down and take you through it, and you can explain it as well as you possibly can, but they're not gonna like feel it. They're not gonna really see it. They're not gonna, know exactly what you're talking about, even if you tell them it was the most horrific thing ever, and you're like, this bug crawled into my brain. They'll have the just concept of it, the gist of it. They won't really know what actually happened to you. So I don't know. I don't know. It's a really interesting question.
Yeah, right. It's like what if science fiction is supposed to do. You're supposed to ask those questions, and you're supposed to come to like an answer there, right? And they'll come up with answers at the very least. Ender's Game. So Orson Scott Card. So my favorite, like two, like Ender's Game is amazing. His sequel is actually really good too. I don't know did you ever check out Speaker for the Dead?
What's it? Speaker for the Dead?
Yeah, that's the sequel to Ender's Game.
No, I haven't read that one.
So my opinion of Orson Scott Card's Ender series, the first two books are absolutely incredible.
Hmm.
Right? If you want to finish that arc of the story, you read 3 and 4. You don't need to read 3 and 4, but you can. 1 and 2 are incredible. I'm being honest. Like I think the first two are such an amazing concept because the thing is, I mean, he does something he commits genocide. He wipes out pretty much a whole species.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
the fuck do you live with that?
Yeah. And
Right?
like, if you haven't read Ender's Game, that blew my mind. Like,
Yes.
this kid thought that he was just doing like a military exercise in a computer or something like that,
It's
but he
video
was
games.
actually fighting another race, and he ended up killing the entire fucking race. like,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
how do you live? You're right. How do you live with that? That's insane.
Yeah, no, and that's what a Speaker for the Dead is. It's the sequel. It's how he lives with that. It's a good answer to
Oh
that
my goodness,
question.
I have to read that.
Yeah. No, like there are some great science fiction out there. No, Orson Scott Card's Speaker of the Dead is a great book. It really, really
Hmm.
is. You don't need to read the other ones. I'm going to tell you, they're not. He says everything he really needs to say in the first two books.
Hmm.
But no, I mean, he was the first guy that came up with the idea of using video games to train people because that's essentially what that is. Like, if you really look at it from that perspective,
Yeah.
they're playing video games to train and to
Yeah.
fight, right? And that was the idea. It's like instead of having people directly on the front lines all the time, right? You have people from the sidelines. Now, oh my gosh, I just got a really cool idea. I got a really, really cool idea. I'll mention that off the air because I guess I have a good idea for a science fiction story. Just thinking about that, actually, something really, really interesting, right? But the thing about that is, like that was like it was revolutionary for the time. Like I think the first book came out in the early '80s, so I mean, like it's an old book, but it's a really, really cool one. And In my opinion, Orson Scott Card's best stuff, in my opinion, are those first two books and some of his other stuff. But yeah, that's that. Yeah, if you want to read like where that story goes, like that's a really good question, right? How do you live with the stuff that you've done and seen and do, and especially something like that? It's like he did something nobody else did ever, and maybe
Mm.
ever will again. And it's like, yeah, I gotta come to terms with that somehow, some way. And that's why it's such an interesting. I still think he's writing Ender books. I could be wrong, but he might still be writing them. I hope not, but
Yeah, I
what?
mean, sometimes you can have a world that you can write in for the rest of your life, and sometimes you can beat a dead horse. You know, it's
Well,
it's kind of a toss up.
it's a hard decision. Like okay, strictly as a business perspective. Okay, let's say you come up with this awesome world that people like, but you said everything you wanted to say within like $3,
Hmm.
but they're paying you a bunch of money to keep telling more books. What do you do?
I mean, you know, as an author, like, you know, you want to be like, yeah, I got it. You know, like and you want to sit there and think like, of course I can create more good stories in this awesome world that I created. You know, of course I can do that. But you know, sometimes it does get to the point where you're just writing to put something out, you know, just to fulfill your contract. And that's never going to give you a good story. That's never going to give you something that you're really proud of years later. You know, I mean, like a great example of that is when Disney took over Star Wars and started really pumping out Star Wars movies. And then they were like, all right, we're going to make a Star Wars movie once a year, every year. And, you know, then they put out the Solo movie, which in theory should have been amazing, but it just was not that good. Like it was okay. It was a decent movie. Like it was a good movie for what it was, but like it didn't have the big epic feel that like Han Solo really deserved. You know, he was a massive player in the entire series, and then his own single origin movie was just kind of fun, kind of okay. You
Well,
know,
because the thing is when you do prequels, I can't remember off the top of my head what was the one between not Phantom Menace, Force Awakens, and Last Jedi. I can't remember what that one was really good. I can't remember what it was called at the top of my head. Someone help me. Someone help me. It's like Shadow of the Empire. No, it's not Shadow of the Empire.
no,
It was
I'm losing it too.
yeah.
Hmm. I'm gonna Google
It's
it.
actually really good, folks. Like that one is a really cool little prequel because it ties up it's an interesting story about a group of people that were talked about but never actually utilized, and it talks
Hmm.
about a really dark time in the world. Like my favorite guy was the force is with me. I'm one with the force is with the guy, like kind of that mantra the whole way through, because there's no Jedi in that. There's no Jedi in that movie. It's just ordinary people standing up against really, really, really evil shit,
Hmm.
right? And that's why that movie is so good, right? Because there isn't really a lot of that super powerful stuff. It's about finding. It's easy to have faith in something when things are going well. It's hard to have faith in something when things are shit,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah, right. And I mean, we've all learned that in the last, I think, few years. Um, it's like,
Yeah.
I believe in the good of people. And again, no matter what side of the argument you were on, you were put through the test on that little question. Um, you know, uh, with through this time. Um, what I realize is you know what, like, and that's what I love about this movie. There are bigger events than you happening all the time,
Hmm.
always, and you don't really have a lot of say in those things sometimes. But where you stand in those moments says is really what it's all about. It's not about what you do to change the world. It's about what you do to stay true to yourself. And that's what I really love about that movie is it's
Yeah.
very much about that.
Yeah. It was. It was The Last Jedi. So it's The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, I'm talking about the side movie in between Force Awakens and Last Jedi. I can't remember what it's
Oh,
called.
are you talking about Rogue One?
Yes.
Yeah, Rogue One was one of the best ones. Okay, that's so
Yeah.
funny. When you were talking about that, I was gonna say, yeah, Rogue One was really good, just like that too.
Yeah. No. No.
It is Rogue
Yeah.
One.
So this is where me and you are going to probably have a very friendly disagreement. I definitely think the last trilogy was better than the prequel trilogy. I will not. I truly believe that. I think the Last Jedi was an inch from being a great movie. It's the difference was an inch,
Hmm.
right? The difference was an inch, and that inch I think cost them the whole series. And that's just the rest of the series. That's what I think.
Yeah.
I can't say Rise of Skywalker is good. I can't say it's the worst. I can't say it's Attack of the Clones bad, but I can't say it's good either. Right? So that's kind of how I see it. Whereas the Last Jedi was like I loved a lot of things about Last Jedi, but I think the crucial thing about, like, if you want to compare like Empire Strikes Back, which is probably not completely fair, but fuck it, it's the best Star Wars movie, right? You had great character moments with all of these characters. So
Hmm.
even when they faced all their failures, like everybody had a moment. Even Vader, like Vader in Return of the like became such a much more interesting character with a
Hmm.
lot of little things they did with him, and the big reveal to him being Luke's father at the very end. And folks, if you're upset I'm spoiling this at this point, seriously,
Right.
yeah, yeah, it's pretty common
You
knowledge at
will
this point.
always be upset about a
Yeah,
spoiler, no
but
matter
but
if it was
um
30, 40 years ago or not.
yes. But the comparison is, if you look at, I think this is the thing. I think I like Ray, I like Finn, I like Rose, I like all the characters in there. But if I'm looking for like that big arc for Ray, she got nothing in the second movie. And I think to be honest with you, that's what made that movie. I still am okay with it, but I get why people weren't, because that character moment you really needed with her wasn't there. And it's like, you're putting yourself really behind the eight ball for the third movie, because you got to tell her story. And that's what the third movie now must be about. There's no other place you can go with it. And yeah. And also, I did not like Palpatine coming back for the last movie. I thought that was like, eh.
I thought they made a lot of really weird choices in the sequel trilogy, honestly. I mean, like, it was good. Like, don't get me wrong. When I watched the first one, um, the fucking
Force
Force
Awakens.
Awakens, man, it's been so long. Um, that like when I went to the theater and watched it, and I felt like a kid again. When you saw the Millennium Falcon, you saw that, you were
Oh,
like,
yeah.
this is cool as hell. But they made a lot of really weird choices that, like, and again, this is just me nitpicking. This is just how I
Oh, yeah.
felt about it, but like, I don't like how Luke died. I thought they could have handled that situation better. I thought they could have had Luke a little more prevalent in it. I just thought it was really weird how he just kind of fell and disappeared and died and everything after, being there telepathically, basically. And then the way that Snoke died, I thought was really anticlimactic. I thought they didn't really build that up that much. Leia out in space, I mean, like, they could have just let that go right there, because they knew that Leia had already passed away at that point. They could have just, or well, excuse Carrie Fisher, they could have just let her kind of pass in space. I understand that they wanted to illustrate the fact that she could use the Force and, bring her in and everything like that. And I don't think that her character really hurt the movies afterwards. I just thought it was weird in the moment. You know what I mean? So yeah, just yeah, and then bringing the Emperor back at the very end, and then Rey's, actually a Palpatine, and like all this. I just thought it was some strange choices, a little bit of fan service that maybe didn't need to be there,
Well,
but
so, see, I actually liked the Snoke death, because
really,
because here's why. We had seen this 3 times before. The one, okay, so we've seen this a couple times before. We saw it the first time in the Return of the Jedi when Luke fought Vader and the Emperor was sitting on the throne. Then they kind of did something similar to that with Dooku and Anakin. Now, if you want to talk about bad choices, that one, in my opinion, was a worse choice. Because the way you set that up the first time was it's just the middle towards the end of the movie. Now, I obviously expected it more in the middle of the movie, not the end of the movie. But I knew, again, that scene when they did that in the first Return of the Jedi, they implied very strongly that this had happened before with Vader when he was still a good guy. And especially when you see that Luke looks at his mechanical hand and looks at Vader's mechanical parts, and it's like, you've gone down similar paths. So, and that's when Luke realized it. And that's when the audience also realizes it. So it's like, okay, I expected that scene. I did not expect that scene in the beginning of Revenge of the Sith. I thought that should have been at towards the middle of the movie, because once that battle was done, there was no conflict. There was no Anakin decapitated Dooku 20 minutes into the movie. And you're like, well, that's not heroic, right? That's not so you go to Last Jedi, okay? So they're fighting Snoke. And Snoke's like this. Now, I'm not going to say this was a perfect idea, but it was an interesting one. Is, okay, so this scene where you expect this temptation, this thing, no, that's not what happens here. Instead, the guy that's tempting gets kicked. It's like, okay, that's cool. Now what do you do? And again, you want to talk about little nitpicks. If you want to make the argument that okay, they had nowhere good to go, okay, I'll acknowledge that. But I actually like that idea, because it's like, well, now you can go down a different path. That's cool, because now you can go do something very different with the mythos. And it made sense in the part of the story it was in, because it's episode 8. It's not episode 3. It's not episode 6. It's episode 8. So now from here on in, you can go carve a completely new path for Star Wars. Very cool. I wish they had thought about it a little bit more before they did it, what that path is going to look like. But I actually thought that choice I really liked that choice. I liked the other thing I really liked was, okay, so I always love it when the director gives away the ending of the movie in a very clever way. My favorite example of this is The Matrix, which is when the Oracle goes to the Neo. You have the gift, but it looks like you're waiting for something. Like what? The next life, maybe. Who knows? Neo dies and comes back as the one, and you're like, oh, you bastards. You told us exactly what was going to happen. Right? You bastards. They did the same thing in Last Jedi. What? You expect me to ride on in with my lightsaber and save the world? That's exactly what Luke did. It was awesome. I thought that was an amazing idea. Him dying, I kind of saw it, because again, projecting yourself that far away would take a toll. But again, that whole idea where I think you're right, is they didn't really talk about the stakes of what Luke was doing when he did that, right? Right, and which again, you have to make that pronounced in somehow, some way, right? And they didn't do that. But again, I liked the ideas behind it. What needed to be done there, and this is just my opinion, Rey had to have more of a prevalent role in the second movie, so that in the third movie you knew what she wanted. When you carve that new direction, where does she go? Right? They weren't sure at the end of the second movie. You could see that. It's like, what do we do next? I don't know. Right? It's kind of that whole thing. So when you get to Rise of the Skywalker, it's a fan service finale. That's what it is. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It makes no bones about it. That's exactly what it is. And from a fan service finale point of view, it did its job. And one really could make the argument that, sequels at the end of the day are just fan service. Which, okay, fair enough. You know what? If that's your angle, I'll respect that choice. But yeah, Force Awakens is a decent movie. Last Jedi, I like it, but I can see why some people don't. Right? Rise of Skywalker, I can't. I have nothing I can say about that first hour. Nothing.
Yeah, I mean, like overall, like I don't think any Star Wars movie is bad. Like overall, like even the new movies, I enjoy the new movies. Even when the prequels came out and everybody shit all over the prequels, I like the prequels. Like I don't think any of them are bad per se. But again, just some of the choices, some of the things that they could have done differently to make it more impactful. I think they should, like you said, I think they should have stopped and thought about it a little bit more, instead of kind of rushing in to get it done and get all these things done. And like to clarify on the Snoke death thing, like I don't think it's a bad thing that he died. Like it was good for it to happen right there. I think the way that he died, I didn't really enjoy that because he was supposed to be this big, massively powerful, ominous being, and he kind of just went down like that. But I mean, anybody takes a lightsaber, they're probably going to die. So I guess that makes sense. But I just again thought it wasn't like there wasn't enough build up to go with it.
His role at that moment in time is like, who is this guy? Is a question that was like, okay, who is this guy? And then it's like, well, it doesn't really matter. He's dead. Well, okay, that's interesting. And again, I thought that was a bold choice. If you had somewhere else to go, if you had
Mm.
somewhere else to go, okay, I would be very, very much interesting. But yeah, everything that was kind of contrived at the very end there, you're like, ah, ah,
I think that's actually a really good point because that's kind of what George R. R. Martin did with Game of Thrones. Is he would introduce these characters, start to build them up. You started to be familiar with them, and then they died. And then he would
yeah,
introduce another character, build it up, and then they died. But like you said, the story always had somewhere to go because of that death. It went in a very specific direction that
yes,
kept you engaged.
yeah.
So
You need,
that's a
you
really
need,
good point.
yeah, you need that, right? Like, also, although if you want to talk about Game of Thrones for just a second, the big problem is this is the problem with that series. Ultimately, even in the books, a lot of good people die more so than the bad people. When the bad people die, it's oddly satisfying. It's very, very satisfying in Game of Thrones.
He does a good
Right,
job.
it is very satisfying. But the fact that one of the reasons it's so satisfying is because a lot of good characters get cacked along the way. It's just
Mhm.
that's just what happens. But the problem with that is, okay, I don't really want to know Cersei's perspective. I know she's a psychotic bitch, right? I want to see her get her comeuppance. I don't want to see her. I don't now, right? That's just my perspective on Cersei, right? It's not the only perspective, but I mean, when you look at like, and also, I mean, in terms of the television show, I really like Daenerys. I really, really like Daenerys, and the ending that was chosen for Daenerys was shit, was complete and utter dog shit.
I actually haven't watched the last season.
I,
Um, I'm
I
really hesitant to. I own it. I bought it on DVD. I just haven't watched it yet because I don't.
so
Heard so many bad things about
well,
it.
here's the deal. Well, because okay, because this is the problem. This is the thing is storytelling. Good stories create expectations from the audience, and
Hmm.
very often the author, as the author, you're the one crafting these expectations. Now, you don't have to follow through on those expectations, but whatever your payoff is, it has to be as satisfying as what people expect. And obviously, and the flip side is if you're talking about expectations, right? If you're doing expectations in a nutshell, um, you know, the thing about the expectations is you got to fulfill them, but you don't want to be too predictable. So you got to put a little twist on them somewhere along the way as well,
Hmm.
which is fine, right? That's totally. There's nothing wrong with either strategy, but you have to make that decision going forward, like what that is, right? If I'm doing an epic fantasy, I'm introducing the big bad guy, and he is transforming the world with his evil powers, and it looks like he's gonna win. And then the hero comes and kicks some ass. It's a very basic story, but it works. It works in a lot of the fantasy. Okay, so Mistborn. Well, what if the original hero uh, right before he's supposed to confront the great evil, gets killed by his buddy. Yes, folks, I'm spoiling lots of shit today. Deal with it. Right. But that's an interesting twist. That's a very interesting. One of the noble companions actually sees his power for himself. That was the villain for the first book of Mistborn. And eventually you get to that Dark One stage again, which is interesting, right? So and now it's a different take. And then one of the cleverest things Sanderson does in the whole series is Vin hears this voice in her head the whole time. And when you find out what that voice actually is, you're like, you bastard, that was brilliant. And I'm not spoiling that because the payoff is just way too fucking good. Right? Right. Payoff is way too fucking good. But it was right there all along. Like again, that's the example of really good storytelling. When you know, okay, this is what the audience expects. Then okay, how do I get now? You gotta make that choice to fulfill it, or you gotta make that choice to go against it. But if you're gonna go against it, you gotta think about what you're replacing it with. How does that make sense? That's what storytelling ultimately, if you want to simplify shit, is about playing with the expectations of the audience. So if you're gonna do that, you gotta understand what you're gonna do. Season 7 of Game of Thrones is, dude, I'm like, you're not going to be happy with the expectations and how it plays out. That's the only thing I've been. Now, if you want to watch it, because it's going to be, God only knows when the 7th book of Game of Thrones is going to come out. The 6th book isn't even out yet, and it's been like 12 years. So who the fuck knows when the 7th book is going to come out? But
yeah. No, I'm definitely going to watch it. I've just been dragging my feet. I don't want to ruin it.
Listen, I know we don't know each other that way. I'm just gonna give you like a big imaginary arrow. It's okay, buddy. Just.
Everything's gonna be fine.
It's gonna be fine. Have a drink, gulp it. Just say, I'm sorry. It's okay, dude. Listen, you're talking to a guy that enjoyed the Matrix trilogy, the original Matrix trilogy, including the 3rd movie. I'm okay. I can acknowledge that is purely my own taste there. It's not, I did not necessarily, I like what they were going for, but yeah, even I can openly acknowledge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's something that comes with, being, and maybe not for everybody, but for me at least, that is something that comes with being, a fantasy science fiction writer. And, I just consume that shit. I love that shit, so like if I watch a movie, like I typically like it, like books are much easier for me to say, I'm sorry, I can't read this. Cause like, it's such a long time investment. And like, if I'm just not into it at all, I might not finish it. But if I'm not into a movie, I might finish it. It has to be really bad for me to turn it off. And I will, but like at the same time, I appreciate what they do. I appreciate the effort that they put into it. And like you said about the Matrix, I can usually kind of see the vision of like what they were going for and appreciate it for that. Like the Aragon movie was largely regarded as crap, but I enjoyed the movie. Like I thought it was pretty good. Like it could have been better, of course, but like I enjoyed it. And I think you even touched on earlier how like you'd enjoy a TV show of a lot of things, but not a movie. And that's where I'm at right now. Like if they're gonna start making all these big series and big worlds into some cinematic project, I want it to be a TV show now on like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, whatever, because you can actually have the time to develop those characters and really develop the world and tell multiple stories. And whereas in movies, even if you have a 3-hour movie, you have to introduce characters, you have to give backstories, you have to build plot, and all of this in such a short amount of time. So you're always going to lose good content. You're always going to lose good, connectors to the next part in the story.
So I mean, there is a trade-off. So here's the thing: movie scripts are super efficient, really good ones, right? You get a sense of who I mean, movies like television and movies are kind of like bits of little miracles. I don't know. Have you ever been on a film crew at all?
No, I have not.
If you ever go on a film crew, you realize just how hard it is to make something really good in television and movies. It's hard. It takes a lot of things to align
Mm.
perfectly to get the result you're going for. And so a good movie needs a super efficient script, great performers to pull it off, and a great director and producer with the vision to see it through. That doesn't seem like much, but it really fucking does, right? It takes a lot to get all those things to work out just right.
I imagine.
And if you're missing one of those key elements, you can still have a good movie, but great will always be outside your reach. So television. So that's the thing about a movie. Now, television show you have more time to make more content, but the limitation with the television show is a budget. So, like, I look at a series like Arrow, like the Green Arrow adaptation. I think it's a solid show, but there are episodes, and you can tell we're like, we gotta put content out. We gotta figure out how to make this fun. So let's just do this kind of episode this week because fuck it, right? Like, I mean, that is the flip side of television, right?
Mm.
Is depending on how syndicated you are, how big you are, you have a lot more hours to fill. And figuring out a show's formula, what makes it work, what makes it tick. You have, I mean, yes, Netflix does create an interesting model for that, but it also creates this too. It's like, well, we did a whole season, we told a whole story. Did it work? Right? I think the last show I watched was Picard. Right? It's like I looked at that. It's like overall, it's a good show, but I do think the pacing in some spots we're all over the place because it's the same thing. It's like, well, we really have a really solid 6 to 8 episode series, but we have 10 episodes. Ah, fuck. Now what are we gonna do? That's the thing about television.
Filler there,
Yeah, that's the thing about television, right? Now you have that right balance, right? Oh, it can be amazing. Like Good Omens is a fantastic example. Like that's a wonderful balance, right? You have a dense enough world where you can do a fun season of it. You tell the story, you get out.
Mm.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, I think part of that is society too, because society always pushes for more and more and more. I mean, you've seen it with like Firefly on one end of the spectrum, where they released one season, it became like a cult classic. So many people love it. People clamor for its return. And then you have other shows that just go on for so long and they drag on, and sometimes like they are really good through most of it, and then at the end you can tell they're just making the show to make the show, or like wrapping it up because it needs to be wrapped up. They're fitting in one final season because they had to tie a bow on it to make the story complete. Like, so it's two complete opposite ends of the spectrum. But I think sometimes people in society can push for something to happen when the story very well could have ended, and could have ended very well, but people want more of it, so they push it and make it happen, and put out kind of mediocre story just to make people happy and make some money.
Well, yeah, again, dude, McDonald's is a beautiful business model. It's a fantastic business model. He's laughing because he knows it's
We
true.
talked about that on This Week in Indies, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a beautiful business model. Like say what you will about everything else, and we will in just a second. As a business model, you can't fault them one bit, right? I mean, look at the fact. Okay, I was a kid when The Simpsons started, right? That show might outlive me. I mean, there's a legitimate possibility that show might outlive me, right?
Yeah.
Right? And the thing is, let's be perfectly blunt. That show has been run to the fucking ground. It has. I mean, there's not much more you can say about those characters,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're getting stupid amounts of money to make it. So, I mean, creatively, it's a vacuum. And I'm sorry, anyone that loves the current Simpsons product, that's my opinion. It's creatively a vacuum. But I can't fault them financially.
No,
One,
no. I mean,
no one bit.
if it's
One bit.
working, man, go for it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like same with South Park, they're like, how long can these people stay in middle school? Like it's been like 20
Oh,
years
oh, oh,
that
oh,
they're
yeah,
still
absolutely.
the same age. It's like, but it works, and people still enjoy it and people still want it. Maybe some of it's nostalgia, maybe some of it is, people kind of just getting into it, and that being a gateway into the older back catalog of The Simpsons and keeping it alive that way.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
whatever it is they're doing, it's working for them. So,
yeah.
more
Now
power to you.
that said, don't look at the French fries too closely. Don't put it in anything. You'll notice that it'll never go bad, ever.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah,
It will
it's
not.
not real anymore. But
No, I worked at McDonald's for 11 years. It was my first job. Well, no, it was my second job, but like when I was 16, got a job there and worked my way up to general manager, and was there for 11 years. So like I absolutely agree with you that you cannot mess with their business model, because
nope.
I mean they have something that really really works in a good way to return, and their training is actually really good. It just depends on the people who are implementing it, the people that are the heads of the store or the heads of the company or the franchise. If they're not implementing the training very well, then that's kind of on them. But like,
You're a general manager, so you knew this. The limitation with the McDonald's model is this, and let's be perfectly blunt: the company probably doesn't pay the very best it should to some of the people that work for it, and that's just an honest assessment, right? So that all said, so this is the thing. I'm not saying anything revolutionary. The people above in that food chain know this too. So what they're hoping for, this is all they're hoping for at this point, because the other thing is McDonald's is ginormous. Like to understand just how big that just and this is true of any business that big. It's so big that no one person, doesn't matter who it is, can keep track of it all. What you sincerely hope, this is all you can really hope for, is that you have, when this engine's that big, is that it keeps running. And going in, there's going to be pieces of that engine that are kind of like, really terrible. Not even the good duct tape. It's not even duct tape. It's like that crappy ass Scotch tape, right? And if you don't look, and as long as you don't look too close, you won't be mad. You won't be too mad at what you see. But you can't, because you recognize the fact that it is so big that you cannot possibly trade it all. So what you can hope for is that there's an average, there's a curve, right? Are the things on this curve? They can be a little above, they can be a little below. You don't want too much of it below, but again, inevitably some of it's going to be,
yeah, yeah,
right? So then that's it. Can I maintain this curve? If I can maintain this curve, it's good. Now if I can't, then we got a problem. But that's the thing. And you look at like The Simpsons as a franchise.
hmm
Same thing. They have a curve. Now, when the show was at its apex, it was here. Now it's kind of like maybe here. It's not quite. It's not quite at. I can step over it. I can trip and still be above it, but it's not what it was. Can we hit? Can we hit here? Can we hit here? Right? Can we hit that? If we can, thumbs up, right? And that's it. Like, and you recognize that with businesses is like, this is how it is, right? That, because again, this idea of a perfect quality system either isn't cost effective or it's just simply too big. And once it hits that point, and right, you're not going to get that quality anymore. You're going to get a quantity, and that in itself though is, you can't argue with it. Like, you just
yeah,
can't.
yeah. And I mean that's where McDonald's wins.
Yep.
It's there,
No,
like
totally.
you're not getting the best quality in the world by any stretch of the imagination. But if you got a McDonald's that like is actually decent at putting out the product, you're getting okay tasting food. I mean, it's a shitty product anyway you cut it up, but like it tastes pretty good, and like
Yeah,
especially for that nostalgic feel. Like when I eat a double cheeseburger, like it takes me back to my childhood, and I'm
yeah,
whatever. But like they fucking have the quantity to provide you a product, and it does not have like doesn't have to be amazing quality every time, but they can provide it to you damn near the same way every time, no matter when you stop, and it's cheaper than pretty much everywhere else around. So
yeah.
they
Well,
they win.
they know exactly who their audience is, right?
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
important. The other thing though too is this. Yeah, speaking of nostalgia, every once in a while I crave chicken McNuggets. I crave their chicken McNuggets every once in a while. It's not an everyday thing, and I refuse to let it become an everyday thing, right? But every once in a while, I'm like, you know what? I really want some chicken McNuggets right now, right? I just do, and you know, that is nostalgia. That is kudos to McDonald's. Like we got you have to give them. And I'm not even like just kudos.
Mhm.
Creatively, as a creative, you want to steal a little bit from the franchise model. You do, right? Now that all said, right, you don't necessarily have to go all the way to that end of the scale either. I mean, like the equivalent we have to McDonald's in creative writing is James Patterson. He gets multiple people
Yeah,
there. Yeah,
you're
but
right.
I mean, no, that's what he's doing. I mean, say what you will about say what because he's right. He can only write so many books in a
Mhm.
year. I can write on a good year 4 books. And there are people way better at it than me that can do way more, but I am not that person. And I'm probably never going to be that person. And I'm okay with that. But here's the thing, right? And but could I come up with a formula that works for me that I could possibly duplicate and then give to someone? Well, yeah, I could. But that means too is that mysterious writer using my pen name is might write a piece of crap sometimes because
Yeah,
it's a piece of crap. But then sometimes you're going to find somebody that really knocks it out of the park. It's like, holy shit. But then you're not going to be able to keep them because you're going to be like, well, fuck this. I deserve way more than this. And they do, and they're right. And you're not going to fight them. Right. So, right. But that's the
yep,
thing. That's the trade off. The name James Patterson doesn't necessarily is synonymous with good writing anymore because you don't really know who's writing them.
no,
But,
yeah,
but strictly on a business model, I mean, he's the McDonald's of writing.
yeah. That's, that's a great analogy,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely true. I mean, like I don't fault him for it one bit.
No.
I know there's a lot of people who, talk a lot of shit about it, and there's like some purists, who are like, well, he should never put out work that isn't his, and he's already made it, so why is he doing that kind of thing? But like that's exactly why, because he's already made it. Like he's already proved himself. He's already put his metal out there, and like now that he's there, like you said, he's creating this larger business that works off of his name. He's letting authors publish under his name and taking money for it. So exactly like you were saying, that's how he's franchising his work. He's like, you can use the Patterson name, but I get X amount of the proceeds from it. And that's exactly what McDonald's does. You can use McDonald's name, you can order from our warehouses, will send you the product, but you run the business.
Yeah,
It's
you run the business, you keep it to our standards, we will never bother you,
yeah,
right?
basically.
Yeah, basically it. If you do fuck with our standards, then you're gonna feel our wrath
Yeah,
because we ain't letting you fucking up our name. Fuck that, right?
right.
So that's it, right? That's it. And knowing all this, McDonald's does accept the fact that some owners are, yeah, we know. It's like, why are you doing this? Because we make a shit ton of money, and we're okay with this to an extent. And
Yeah,
sometimes you're gonna have this amazing owner and like, oh my god, we gotta show you off to everybody, and we love you. There's always a little bit of that
yeah,
going on, and
yeah,
that and that and that's the nature of a business like that. Like that's just the way it is, and it's never gonna be. And I say that like writing as a business, like again, I'm trying to make a living being a creative. I think I came up with some really fun advertising model I'm kind of building. And the thing about that is I'm doing this based off of what I've learned doing the show. And so it may be a wonderful deal. It might blow up in my face, but the idea is, again, I'm creating a business model. Now, if it gets to the point where I get more clients than I know what to fucking do with, then do I hire somebody else and train them how to do this? Right? Using my model, like, that kind of stuff, right? And it's like, yeah, maybe, right? Maybe not. I don't know. Like, but
Yeah.
I mean but that's the thing. Like, create as a creative, yeah, you can turn any idea, any book, any intellectual property into a franchise, and that's the dream.
Yeah.
But the price you're gonna have to pay, folks, is this: if you do get to that point, your franchise is not always going to be the quality you hope for. Sometimes you will get it and you will love it. Sometimes you won't, and you're gonna have to live with it. And that's just the way it is. That's just business.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's one of the really nice things about, being an indie author, or like the really nice thing about the advent of the internet and where we are today, and being able to use this technology to where we can connect to people so instantaneously, as we can connect our ideas to other people so quickly, in our projects and our passions to other people so quickly and easy, easier than it's ever been, so
Mm-hmm.
it really gives indies and freelance workers a leg up on, getting into the market and doing it for themselves. Like, it really opens up the opportunity for everybody. Because if
Absolutely.
somebody really wants to be a successful author, they can go do it right now by themselves. Like, they
Mm-hmm.
don't have to wait for a company to pick them up and pick up their manuscript and pay them out and everything like that. If you really have the determination and grit to learn the industry, learn the marketing, learn how to get your books in front of people, learn your target audience, all that, then you can go out and do it yourself right
Mm-hmm.
now, and it's never been like that in history, so I think it's really a really exciting time for any creative venture right now.
Intellectual property is the last frontier, my friend. It really, really is. And I know, folks, I'm saying intellectual property because it's not just books. We talked movies. We haven't talked, like, that wonderful coffee cup he drank that was of Deadpool. That's intellectual property, folks. That's an example of it in action. Um, Video games. Where do you stand on video games? I'm very curious about this.
Oh man, I love video games. Love
Yeah.
them.
What's your series of choice?
Like, damn, it's tough. I really love Fable for RPGs. I really love Elder Scrolls for RPGs.
You're an
I've
Xbox guy.
recently been playing Fortnite with my kiddo, and that's been a lot of fun. I've been, let me see,
That's Jag.
Call of
you've
Duty, love it.
been you've been threatened by Jag.
I know. I'm
Well,
holding
yeah, yeah. I
on.
mean, we that's how we started.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for noticing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, all that kind of stuff. Like, I love RPGs mainly because, again, fantasy, sci-fi, all that. Love that shit. But, like, the games where you can really play with other people and interact with other people, like MMOs, you can, and I enjoy them. But for being such a big fantasy person, I've never been huge on MMOs. Like, I like World of Warcraft. I've played it. It's fun, but I feel like I burn out of those pretty quick. I like the first person RPGs like Skyrim and whatnot, where you can run around and decide everything that you're doing. You don't have to, party up with a bunch of people just to pass a level, but I do also really enjoy old WoW greater than new WoW. I I don't know. I mean, old WoW was so hard. Like, that was one of the big problems with it, because it, like, wouldn't tell you anywhere you were supposed to go. It was just like, and it would give you directions. It'd be like, find this town northeast of this place, and then you'd have to go and, like, physically find it. There was no, like, trail to show you where you were going. There was no anything, like you had to physically go through and figure everything out. So I understand that, and that is fun, and that gives you a different level of gratification, than just following a trail somewhere showing you exactly where it is. But it was also much harder to level your characters in old WoW as well. You had to grind for hours and hours, maybe even days to, make little movements in your character. So it's all in your play style, but yeah, I love RPGs, love first person shooters, love RTS games, real time strategy games. So much
Okay.
fun, all that shit.
Real time is not quite. It's not my thing. I get why people like it. I totally do. It's just not my thing. I'm a JRPG guy, so my games are
Okay.
Persona, the Tales games. See, I love the Tales games for one very simple reason. I used to be really like once upon a time I was really good at fighting um SC2. What's SC2, Jag? Yeah, it's SC2 just for uncool people like myself. Um
Soul Calibur, maybe.
Soul Calibur 2, yeah. Maybe.
Soul Calibur was a good game.
StarCraft
StarCraft.
2. Ah, yes.
That
No, okay,
FPS
fair
game,
enough.
so good.
No, it totally is. No, it totally is. I'm not arguing. So but fighting games, once upon a time, I was, especially Street Fighter, I was championship caliber. Now, this was a long time ago. This is like Street Fighter Alpha 3 era. I used to spar with the Caribbean champion. He used to go to college
Nice,
at the university. I used to
nice.
spar with him. So I was really good at that game, right? Like really, really good at that game. And so when I play the Tales games, I get kind of like a little bit of both. I get that old school fighting feel. It's not quite the same because it's a little bit more limited, but again, it's an RPG. I don't want a full fight feel, but I have a
Mm.
little bit of that. I still get the leveling and grinding, and also I get really stupid skits with all my characters, which is always a lot of fun. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. Um, Persona is another game I like because I love the story elements. Like they make really, really compelling characters. I never thought I'd like a Sims game that's also an RPG, but that's what Persona actually is. It's bit of both, and it actually works really well. I was like, okay. And then finally, my favorite series right now, not those, is Ni no Kuni. I really enjoy the Ni no Kuni stuff. Part
Okay.
Monster Hunter, part like classic RPG. And then I go back to like my old fogey, like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy 6, like Final Fantasy
Yep.
7
I
stuff.
was literally just playing Final Fantasy X last week. Such a
I
good.
okay, I am 50-50 on 10. I love a lot of things about it, but Blitzball is total bullshit, dude.
Yeah. So I played the tutorial and like the one game they make you play, and then I've never played after that because yeah, I don't enjoy that either. But like I love the turn-based combat. I love it, and I'm actually kind of pissed that they got rid of it. And I love the summoning the Aeons and everything like that. That's so cool. Magic in the game, so cool. The even the skill sphere tree that they have to level their characters is really cool as well. In that,
the sphere tree is my favorite part of that game. It's my
yeah.
absolute favorite part about it.
In the remastered version that they have on Game Pass right now, you can pick an expert skill tree to where everybody starts at the same spot, and you can level your characters however you want to.
So that's ten
That's
two,
ten
Jay.
two.
That's
Yeah.
10-2. It's 10-2. It's not 10-1. 10-1 is very much an old school RPG. 10-2, although I actually don't mind the outfit system, not because of the fan service aspect. I actually do like the idea that your character could be three different builds and you can actually build them. The customization part of it was really interesting to me.
Hmm.
Oh, no, Jag, no. 10X, Final Fantasy 10 by itself is actually a really good game, with the exception of, like I said, I hated Blitzball. Just terrible shit.
Yeah, and like it's so funny because like I know that it's translated from Japanese and everything like that, but when you're sitting there like playing it, and especially now, going back and playing it now, like the story behind it is actually a really good story, but the writing is terrible. like because like just the way that they say things and the way that their characters move and everything, like it's all so weird. Half of it is really cringy, but like it's when you actually like pay attention to the story aside from those little things, the story is really good, and it's a classic story, and it's really fun to play, but there's just a lot of weird little moments in it where you're like, that was weird,
Yep. No, so Final Fantasy VI, the original, translated really bad. Yes, no, it totally does, Jag. Like, something that will kill games without localization. That all said, the original script for 6 is terrible. Like, I didn't realize how terrible it was until I was much older. But the remastered version of it makes so much more sense. It's like, also, it's the best idea I've ever seen in Final Fantasy. The bad guy wins, and he wins convincingly halfway through the game. It's like, oh wow, this is not what I expected. And no, that's why like 6 is always going to have a soft spot for me for that reason, because you don't get that anywhere else. Like, you just don't. Whereas 7 is my favorite battle system. The original one is my favorite battle system of all time. It's a bit busted, but man, I love customizable battle systems, and that is about as good as you can get. 10 came 10-2. This is why I actually don't hate 10-2, Jag, is because I love the customization aspect of it. I grant you, it was silly as fuck. Yeah, no one hates Final Fantasy 7, right? Right? No one hates Final Fantasy 7. I don't know anyone that hates that game, right? X2 is so. Okay, so I'll tell you what Final Fantasy X2 was, Jag. I'll tell you that just for you. It's the Charlie's Angels version of Final Fantasy. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's Charlie's Angels. What if Charlie's Angels was an RPG? That's Final Fantasy X2.
Yep.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 9 was really fun too.
Oh yeah. Oh wait, I think I broke her brain. I listen. I understand your pain, but when I first saw the game, that was literally my first impression. It's the Charlie's Angels of Final Fantasy.
Yeah, that's fair. It's a fair assessment.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just 10, not 10, but 10-2, not 10. 10's its own thing, but no, 9's a sleeper hit. This is the thing about 9. I think the thing I like about 9, it feels like the really old school Final Fantasy games.
Yeah.
Right, and it does this, and it modernized that so well. I thought it was a really cool. If you love the old school Final Fantasies 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that game is a beautiful love letter to all of those games. Like, it really, really is. That's what I love about it. But I get why they went in a different direction too, because there's a certain point with that style. It's like, where do you go from here? But at the same time, you look at the stories that they were telling back then versus now. The stories were better. Like, you were more invested in it. Like, here's an RPG, like turn-based RPG we have not talked about that's amazing for that era. Earthbound is freaking fantastic. Did you ever play it?
I don't think I played that. No.
Oh, that one is worth finding. Like, you don't buy the hard copy. You will cry at how much that game is worth. Right? You'll cry. But it is some of the smartest dialogue I've ever seen. It's not a perfect game, but it is as good a turn-based game as you will ever play, and it's phenomenal. Whether you do it through like I'm not cool. I'm sorry, I can't remember. Not what the real version of the game, but you find a boot. I can't remember what they call the bootleg copies of it. It's worth finding. It's worth playing.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, this is like decades ahead of its time, and it kind of is. It's still maybe a little, in terms of storytelling, a little ahead of its time.
Oh, so, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, another one was Blue Dragon is really fun.
I
Um,
haven't played that one.
that was a turn-based game as well, and it was kind of like a mix between Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. Like a lot
Ooh.
of the characters looked like characters from Dragon Ball Z, and each of them got a shadow. So each character has a giant shadow that comes out of the back of them, and they have different powers and abilities and things like that. And you would kind of use the shadow to fight in the middle of your turn-based fights, and it was a really, really fun game.
Yeah. No, it's that's cool. That's really really cool. I'd have to check that out. I've never played that one. But yeah, like and then finally the other really cool old school one I love. I'm playing this one as kind of my retro game right now, Chrono Trigger, because
Nice,
it
nice.
yeah, no one hates that game either. No one.
No,
Right?
it's just so cool.
Yeah.
And the art is so cool.
Yeah, it's
Like
just fun. It is just such a fun. See, like I said, no. See, nobody hates Chrono. Like again, if you're gonna go retro, everybody knows what the good shit is, right? Like
yeah.
when I was in the Super Nintendo era, it was Secret of Mana, Final Fantasy 3, or now known as 6, or Chrono Trigger,
Mm,
and nobody complained whichever one you chose,
yep.
right? Yeah,
Yep. Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. No.
whatever you. I think it was Secret of Nevermore or Secret of Mana. I can't remember which one it was, but yeah, that was also a really good, like, hidden little gem from that
One
era.
one game that I really, really wish that they would bring back or redo
What's
or
up?
came out on PlayStation 1. It's called Jade Cocoon, and it was a really fucking
I've heard of
awesome
that one.
game. Like I think that was really ahead of its time as well, because you would play as this character who would go out into the woods and you would kind of catch monsters, kind of like Pokemon. And you would catch these monsters, and each of the monsters had different elemental properties, and they had different individual abilities and stats. And then you could take them into this little room and like put them together, like merge them together, and then they would come out looking different and have different stats and abilities and different elemental qualities. And then you could take that one that you merged and merge it with another one, and it would come out and have different abilities, and you could do that endlessly, in any combination that you could think of, and it would look different every time and have different abilities every time. And there was obviously ones that were better matches than others, and sometimes it would actually hurt their abilities if you merged them with something else. But like it was such a cool system, and so like I haven't seen anything like it since, really. And I just really want that to come back.
So my other favorite style is the alchemy style games, like the Ulterior Iris stuff. Like the alchemy systems would put me down rabbit holes for hours and hours and
Hmm.
hours, because yeah, it was one of those moments where you were like, oh wow, I can play the game, or I can make cool shit, right? And the cool thing was, you made the cool shit, you made the absolute cool shit. You advanced the story in other ways, which was really, 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 really fun,
Yeah.
right? But I will say, Ulterior Iris has the weirdest bonus boss I ever fought. You had to fight these 3 golden pigs, and those fuckers were fast. They strike like 3 to 1. It was just like,
Hmm.
you guys are evil, just so evil. Although and the cutscene you get for it is not worth it. It's one of those ones where it's like, but I love games where there's got to be a good balance with RPGs. With you got enough versatility, but I also like a little bit of story structure too. Like there's got to be a place where you can go, right? And I think that's why MMOs aren't well. MMOs, I have 2 problems with them. One is if I play one, I don't create anything else, and I like writing books for a living, and I kind of want to keep doing that. So it's between that and an MMO, I'm going to choose the books over the MMOs. Just me. I mean, somebody else might think that's the poor life choices. That's fine. But the other reason too is because MMOs, there's no end game. Like there are achievements in MMOs. I'm not saying that, but I
Hmm.
love the end of the game kind of achievement, and that doesn't really exist in an MMO. And I think that's why I'm not as crazy about them as I am about like fully completed start. I love beginning, middle, end storyline kind of stuff. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I'm right there with you on that.
Yeah. So, but so I guess here's the question. We haven't talked about any of your books yet. We probably should at some point. But
That's all
but
right.
yeah,
Good conversation, you know.
yeah. Well, I think you've had fun with this. This is probably not a typical interview for you anyway.
Yeah,
So
no, it's been a good time.
yeah, it's like I don't care. We didn't talk books much, but fuck, we talked video games. I'm in on that.
Yeah,
But
it's all
no,
good, man. It's all shit I enjoy, you know.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's the whole point, right? But here's the thing. See, for me personally, I don't really give a crap if my stuff makes it to movies. I am much more excited about the idea of a video game or a board game than a movie. And the reason why is because to me, I think video games are the best medium to tell stories in right now because they have an advantage over movies and even books. And that's this interaction. So even if you hate my story, you absolutely hate my story, but if my game's super super fun, you'll still play it because that feeling of achievement is another thing I can tap into. So it's like if I make a really cool game mechanic, I can almost carry just with that. Now if I have a really good story and a good game mechanic, right, on together, right, I got you. And I
Hmm.
got you forever because you will replay it again and again and again and again. And then eventually when I go, hey, guess what? If it's a board game, I'm doing an add on. Wait, what? I'm in. Just shut up and take my monies. Or if I do a video game, hey, did you like the first one? Cool. I'm either going to create some DLC or I'm going, hey, it'd be really great. Another full story like this. And they'd be like, oh my God, this is brilliant. Right. And you can't do that with a movie. Right. But you can do that with a game. And that's why I
Hmm.
think games intrigue me so much.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think I mentioned it earlier that, you know, you can kind of, with a movie, you can kind of just beat it dead, you know, and keep trying to re-release new things to, you know, keep capitalizing on the money that you're bringing in. But yeah, I think that happens with movies so much faster than it does with games. You know, I mean, like even Mortal Kombat is on like 11 right now, and, you know, you never really get tired of it, you know. Sometimes it's the same thing over and over again. You know, like the newest Tekken, I don't think did really as well as I would have liked it to because I love the Tekken games. They're so much fun. But yeah, Mortal Kombat's still going strong. They're making movies about it now, and like the movie was okay. Um, I thought it was really good, actually. I enjoyed it, but I still thought it could have been better. You know, I was still let down a little bit on the movie. But other than that, you know, I did really enjoy the movie. I'm looking forward to the next one. Um, so, you know, hopefully they'll do well with that. But
I
like the story of Mortal Kombat is actually really cool too, in that they
mm-hmm.
tell throughout the games.
So my personal thing about that is the last movie's okay. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's okay. Like that's what it is to me. But the stuff I was really like, did you remember like the old like shorts they did with Michael J. White as Jax and Jerry Ryan,
Yeah.
I think was Sonya Blade? I really wanted to see that because I thought that was it was a cool take on something that was already there. They just told it from a different angle, and I thought that was intriguing, right? Because it was like, yes, all the mystic stuff's still there, but you're telling it from Jax's point of view or Sonya's point of view, right? More so than they're telling any of the other characters. And I'm like, that's really, really interesting. And as far as the video game Mortal Kombat 11 goes, okay, that was really, really cool. I really, really enjoyed um, the last one was a homage. I don't know what they're going to do for Mortal Kombat 12 because there's really nowhere for them else to go at this point. Liu Kang becomes Thunder God Liu Kang, which is like cool. It's a
Mhm.
cool way to wrap his story up. They don't need to have him come back, and that's cool. They probably shouldn't, but it's like okay, so you can now it's the era of Cassie Cage and everybody else. But I loved the character development, like between Johnny, Sonia, even Kano. Like they did a really good job of exploring all the different characters, right? I think my favorite character in the Mortal Kombat last Mortal Kombat game was Scorpion, old and young Scorpion. Because old Scorpion, man, that guy is a badass. But young Scorpion is like, I love his redemption arc because he was misled by the time travel, and once he realized it, he overcame like his vengeance sooner. Such an interesting arc. You can see how far some of these characters have come from their very beginnings. I thought that was such a cool thing. That's why I thoroughly enjoyed the last Mortal Kombat. Story's great. The game mechanics, okay. Yeah. I admit there's a little bit of a whore in me. I enjoyed the fact that the Terminator and Rambo were both in there as collectible characters.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a whore. I can acknowledge this, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, like, yeah, I've been playing Mortal Kombat since like Mortal Kombat 1, like the original one that came out. And I've been playing it for fucking ever. And like you were saying, you were really good at Street Fighter. Like it was hilarious. Like last summer, I went over to somebody's house that I work with. Me and my kiddo went over there, and one of the line cooks that works with us was there, and he was just kicking everybody's ass. I come over and they're like, yeah, Dom's beating all of us, and so I sat down to play him and I beat him first try. And then, I played the next person, beat him again, and I hadn't played Mortal Kombat in like 3 years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just because like Mortal Kombat is Mortal Kombat, and it's going to be Mortal Kombat as it keeps going. If you've played Mortal Kombat, you've played the new Mortal Kombat. Like the button systems are set up really, really similarly. You can almost figure out all of the special moves without even looking at the moves list, like, so it's just one of those games that I'm always going to love.
Yeah, I will say, I think Mortal Kombat, this is maybe the advantage Mortal Kombat has over Street Fighter. Street Fighter always was a little bit more, I'm not going to say there wasn't techniques in Mortal Kombat, but there was a certain base level with all the fighters in Mortal Kombat. Whereas in Street Fighter, they're all a little different.
Yeah.
So, right, they're all a little different, except for maybe Ryu and Ken. And so I know that, again, I used to be good. So now, in my head, I still know what to do. But my muscle memory isn't there anymore. So,
right.
So what happens now is I'll see someone that's really good, like with Zangief, just work me, just absolutely work me, because it's just like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore, right? I just don't know anymore, because I do know, but I don't have the reflexes anymore to keep up with you.
Right.
So I just get smashed, right? So it is what it is. I definitely, my fighter of choice in Mortal Kombat, my fighter of choice, yes, it's Scorpion. I think everybody doesn't. Anyone that's played that game won't blame me for that. In Street Fighter, I actually am really good with Vega and Ken, but my favorite one is Cammy. I enjoyed Cammy very, very much.
Yeah. Cammy's badass. Vega was always good. In Mortal Kombat, I usually go with like Kung Lao or Sub-Zero, or sometimes like Smoke and Noob Sabat, those types of characters. Those are a lot of fun to play with. Scorpion's always a badass. I like how the new movie kind of had him as the hero of it and Sub-Zero the villain, because a lot of stories that I've seen put out there, Mortal Kombat, is Sub-Zero's the good guy and Scorpion's the bad guy, because Scorpion goes to hell and blah blah blah. So I haven't seen Scorpion's story really explored in that way. And if they went into it in any of the games, I must have missed those ones or something like that, because I always remember Sub-Zero being the good guy and Scorpion being the bad guy. So for me, it was surprising in the movie.
So I will say this: if you watch the modern take on Noob Sabat, you'll realize that Sub-Zero wasn't always a good guy then either. And that's all I'll say. I won't spoil it for you, because it sounds like that's something you'd like to find out for yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You probably should mention your books at some freaking point.
Oh, yes. So I do have a novella out right now that is like the lead into my series. It's called Entanglement, and it follows like basically the goddess of creation who created everything in our universe, and follows her like teaching the younger gods about the universe and the responsibility that they have. And then that leads into my main story, which is coincidentally about a couple of those gods that she's teaching, but they don't have any memories of them being gods, and they don't have any memories of anything, and they wind up on a weird, different version of Earth because there's an event that happens in my novella that basically shakes up or the entire universe. It puts like the elements of a universe into a big ball, like not literally, but shakes them all up, spews them back out, and everything's different. Like there's cities missing from Earth, and there's new species on Earth, and some are gone, and everything like that. So everything is all weird and messed up. So the gods wake up and have no memory of anything that happened, and are also navigating this weird world that isn't how it's supposed to be. It's so it's more of a science fantasy book, which is kind of weird because I love, like, if I had to pick, I would say I like fantasy more than science fiction. But
Yep.
I chose my big debut series to be science fantasy, with really strong elements of both. There's a lot of science fiction elements, and there's a lot of fantasy elements in it as well. But it's really exciting, really fun. That is on pre-order right now, and that's called The Glitch. And that's all I have at this moment, but I have plans for the other 2 books in the series, and then I also have plans for another 3-book series this year as well.
So I'm looking for it. Do you have a link?
Yeah, I do. I can send the link over.
I found. Oh, so the glitch apparently it's already available on Kindle right now. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
you can pre-order The Glitch on Kindle right now.
Yes. So I'm going to send that link right here for people to look at because I found it. I found it.
Wonderful, wonderful.
There you go, folks.
And then let me see here. I will find Entanglement as well, because it's that one's free, completely free, and it's about 15,000 words or so, and it's a good lead in and a good setup to the world that is about to be coming.
That's all right. So and that, just people. Yes, it is very nice cover art.
I am going to.
That's right. We are trained professionals here, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely trained motherfucking professionals, especially me. Actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this really quick while I'm looks. It is one of my grandmother's birthday today. She is 85 years old. So I'm going to do this really terribly, and I'm sorry if you got. I will take money if you want me to stop. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Oma. Happy birthday to you. There you go. There you go.
It's fantastic. No, I found the link and I sent it to you, but I can't post it in the chat because I think
no, that's fine. I can, and now that I know it, I heard that like little magic button here go off. So I'm going to assume that was you. Magic button. All right. So give me a second, folks, and then we'll do this, and then we'll get to the wrapping up the show. So I think we have an interview here. What do you think, good sir?
Oh, like this was a lot of fun. If that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
I had a blast sitting down and chatting with you guys, and just shooting this shit about everything that I love, because literally all of this.
Yes. Yeah.
Video games.
I can't promise every episode's like this. I mean, I've had deep conversations about everything you can possibly imagine, but it just seemed like, let's just shoot the shit tonight. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I also love food. You know, that's another one of my passions. I've been in the restaurant industry for 16 years, and you know, I do a food blog along with it goes out in my newsletter and everything like that. And you know,
You have a
I
link to
do
said
so
newsletter?
much stupid shit. What's that?
Do you have a link to said newsletter?
Yeah, I believe I do. That entanglement. If anybody signs up for that and gets that, that'll sign you up for my newsletter immediately.
Okay.
Um, and then let me find the actual link for it.
If you can't, don't worry. I'm just getting my stuff set up here to wrap up the show because,
Oh, you are all good, man.
yeah. So while he looks, this is my latest book release, ladies and gentlemen. It's called Alice One. It's Alice in Wonderland and Greek mythology mashed up together. Alice is Pandora. Alice chases the Queen of Hearts over the edge of the world and ends up in the Greek underworld, where there to escape she must play croquet against Jason of the Argonauts. And in this underworld maze, Alice and company discover gods, monsters, and ultimately themselves. It's an epic poem written by yours truly, illustrated by Kenzie Carr, available now.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yes. You're
Sounds like a
like,
fun.
I've gotten practice at this. You gotta get good at that, at selling yourself. And so, folks, I'm going to mention a couple more things, and we're going to wrap up for sure. Tomorrow, there's going to be 2 interviews. The first interview is going to be at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 Pacific. It's going to be Edward Davis. And then at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern time, it'll be Kat Flannery. Now, the interesting thing about Kat is this is also going to be starting something new. I am going to be creating advertising content for any author that wants it. I'm kind of working through the bugs this week, but basically, I have a big mouth and I have a podcast that actually also this week has broken 1,000 downloads, which I think that's an incredible feat for a 1 week total. That's really, really cool. That's always been a milestone in my head, and this is the second time I've hit it. Now it's gone even higher than before. So thank you to everybody watching or listening for listening to my show. I appreciate you all, and I want to just say that wholeheartedly. That's an amazing thing. But yeah, so Tuesday is going to be kind of a special little show. To everybody watching, listening, the Tuesday evening one. But I also got Edward Davis, who was so sweet, let me actually go to my metal show on Friday, right? And yes, so yeah, reaching these goals has definitely been it's been very awesome to see. Oh, there we go. I'm assuming this is it. Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
And your art's incredible. I should introduce you as an individual. I think you two would get along just fine. So if you want to get into Adam's newsletter, this is definitely where you get into Adam's newsletter,
Yeah, and
folks.
I do a lot of fun stuff on there. You know, I try to give away free books every week. Like I send out a newsletter every week, and I try to give away free stuff every time. I try to make sure that there's book fairs and free science fiction and fantasy for people every time I send one out. And then I go through a metal portion of my newsletter where I talk about metal headlines or share the latest episode of Kingdom of Heavy, which is a metal and fantasy podcast I do with Joe Compton. And then I do a food portion of it that I call Glitch Kitchen. Glitch Media is my media company, and it's based off of The Glitch, you know, my first book. So I do Glitch Kitchen, that is my food blog and different stuff like that. And then I also do Glitch Gaming, where I talk about gaming news and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just a whole lot of stuff in there, and I try to give away as much free content and value as I possibly can.
And as for me, this is my newsletter, and this is where we're going to wrap up. I don't do as much free stuff as he does, but what I am doing right now is I'm slowly just communicating with people on a regular basis. It's not quite daily, it's not quite weekly, it's somewhere in between that most of the time, depending on what stuff gets in the way of life. If you sign up, I'll be talking and engaging, and anyone that actually gets ahead will actually get to see what I'm working on this week before anybody else. Like I said, I'm using this podcast to create content for authors and other creatives and small businesses to actually have advertising content, and I'm going to be working on that for the that is going to be my next project. I think I have the big mouth for it, so I'm going to give that a real go. And Adam is just like laughing at me. He's like, "Yep, you certainly did, buddy." But
Hey, you can't laugh at yourself, man. Then what
absolutely
do
not. Hey, yeah, totally,
you do?
totally. No, you have to. You have to take yourself seriously, or or
Mhm.
not so seriously sometimes, because honestly, you got to deal with yourself. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Seriously living your life, not that seriously.
yeah, that's right. If listen, your head can only get so big, and then you have to let it pop. I take that
Yeah.
from me, personal experience. Adam, I really thoroughly enjoyed having you on the show. I'd definitely come back at some point down the road. I would love to have you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on, Josh. I appreciate it, man. It was a good time.
Yeah, for everybody watching, thanks for everybody, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys had a wonderful time with this episode. I will be back tomorrow, like I said, with 2 episodes. One again at 12 Pacific, 3 Eastern. Another one at 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern. I'm gonna have 2 amazing guests, Edward Davis and Kat Flannery. And apparently, yes. And there you go. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Jag.
Yes. So to everybody watching, everybody listening, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Stay inspired. Keep shining the bar. I'll be back for a double header tomorrow.